The weekend trip to Paris was canceled, my parents said. But on Sunday, I saw photos of them. My parents called it a pause. That was their word for anything that made them look considerate, while still getting what they wanted. On Thursday, January 11th at 6:42 p.m., my mother called while I was finishing a client deck at the small desk wedged between my kitchen and the window.
The radiator hissed.
Outside, the streetlights were already on, turning the wet sidewalk the color of cheap copper. "Sweetheart," she said in the tone she used for waiters and dentists, "we need to talk about Paris."
I muted my laptop notifications. Okay.
My father's voice came in close to the phone like he was leaning over her shoulder. "We're going to have to cancel the weekend trip," he said. "Have to, the way people say traffic, like it was an act of nature." For 3 months, the trip had been the only thing my parents spoke about that didn't involve my younger brother's new car or their new kitchen backsplash. It was supposed to be a 4-person weekend, my parents, my brother Kian, and me. They called it a family reset. They also called it an early birthday gift for me, because turning 28 apparently required an international backdrop. I didn't ask for Paris. I hadn't asked for anything, but I'd said yes because saying no was never the clean escape people imagined. In our family, a no was a negotiation. A yes was an obligation. My mother continued, "Your dad has a work situation. Nothing serious, but it's not the right time." "I understand," I said. There was a beat of silence, as if she expected more. My mother liked a scene. If I was disappointed, she preferred it dramatic. If I was fine, she took it as an insult. "You're taking this very calmly," she said. "I'm at work," I replied. "I can adjust."
My father cleared his throat. And about the expenses.
"Since it was a gift, we've already paid for some things. We'll sort it out." "Sort it out" was another one of their phrases. It meant, you won't see the details and you shouldn't ask. I made a note anyway. Date, time, exact words. It was a habit I'd developed after college, when I realized my parents' memories were flexible in a way that always favored them. My mother's voice softened again. "We'll do something local instead. Maybe a nice dinner next week. Somewhere with photos?" There it was. Somewhere with photos. "Sure," I said. "Good," she replied quickly, relief and satisfaction braided together. "We'll call you with a plan." After we hung up, I stared at the boarding pass screenshot pinned in my notes app. It wasn't a physical ticket, just the confirmation email I'd received when my mother insisted she needed my passport details to book everything under one reservation. At the time, I'd sent her a photo of my passport. She'd replied with a heart and "Perfect, my love." And then, because she never missed a chance, she'd asked if I could transfer my share of the hotel deposit just to keep it tidy. That was how the trip had become a gift that cost me $620. She called it symbolic participation. I called it my rent. I didn't feel much in the moment. I rarely did with them. Reactions were expensive. They cost sleep and explanations and long circular calls where my mother cried and my father asked why I was making it a thing. Instead, I opened my banking app and found the transfer to my mother from October 2nd, $620. Memo: Paris hotel deposit. I took a screenshot and saved it to a folder I'd labeled Family. The folder already had things in it: emails, texts, and notes from past incidents that were too small to be scandal, but too consistent to ignore. When you grow up with people who rewrite reality, you learn to keep copies of reality. I'd had practice. The power imbalance in our family wasn't subtle. It had structure. My parents were the type who hosted charity brunches and posted long captions about gratitude. My father was a senior manager at an import company and wore his reputation like a watch. Expensive, always visible. My mother had never worked outside the home, but she managed the way some people manage budgets. Kian was their favorite project. Handsome, loud, always going through something. He was 25 and lived 15 minutes away, but my mother still cooked for him twice a week and called his impulsivity a big heart. I was the other thing, the reliable one. I'd moved out at 22. I paid my own bills, learned to navigate life without their approval, and kept my opinions trimmed to fit small spaces. My parents liked telling people I was so independent. They said it like they'd taught it to me, not like I'd built it out of necessity. They also liked teasing me in public, in ways that made them look playful. At my cousin Samira's engagement dinner in December, my mother had tapped her glass for attention and announced to the table, "Lena is still single. But don't worry, she's very focused on her spreadsheets. Everyone laughed, even Samira, because it's easier. I smiled and sipped water. I didn't correct her. I didn't mention that I was single because I was busy repairing the parts of myself that had learned love meant control. Later that night, as the restaurant emptied and coats were pulled on, my father had slung an arm around my shoulders and said loudly, "At least we don't have to worry about wedding costs for you anytime soon." My aunt had chuckled. My mother had looked pleased, like she'd landed a joke on television. I'd said nothing. Calm is a kind of armor. It makes certain people careless. The Paris trip had been their latest performance. They'd told family friends about it for weeks. My mother had even mentioned it to her hairdresser, then told me, "I love that she was happy for us, not for me." I wasn't naive. I knew my parents didn't do anything unless it could be posted. My mother had already hinted at outfits and photo spots. She'd asked, casually, if I could bring a couple nice dresses, because Paris is romantic. And when I said I didn't really wear dresses, she'd laughed. "You're so difficult, Lena," she'd said, smiling. "We're trying to give you a life." I'd wondered then if the trip was for me at all, but it had seemed too elaborate to be fake. Flights, hotel, reservations, the whole story. So when the cancellation call came, I accepted the explanation. Work situation. Not the right time. I accepted it the way I accepted most things, quietly and with a mental bookmark. On Friday, my mother texted a group chat with me and Kian. "Mom, family, we're postponing Paris. Dad has a work thing, but we'll do a beautiful dinner next week." "Don't worry, it's all handled," Kian reacted with a thumbs up emoji. I didn't react at all. I opened the message, took a screenshot, and saved it to the same folder. Saturday went by in the calm way weekends often do when you live alone. Laundry, groceries, a long walk in the park with my headphones in and my mind half on work, half on nothing. I didn't call my parents. I didn't ask about refunds. I let the air clear. Sunday morning I made coffee and sat on my couch in socks, scrolling without interest. The algorithm served me what it always served me. Engagement announcements, baby photos, people pretending their lives were effortless. Then I saw my mother's face. It wasn't on her account. It was tagged in someone else's post. A photo carousel from a woman named Nadia, one of my mother's friends from her volunteer committee. The first picture was a mirror selfie in a hotel elevator. The second was a table set with croissants and tiny jars of jam. The third was a skyline, gray and elegant, seen through a window with sheer curtains. And the caption, written in that breezy, performative style my mother loved, said, 48 hours in Paris with my favorites, a hum so needed. I stared at the images until the coffee cooled in my hand. In the fourth photo, my mother was in a cream coat she'd bought last month for the trip. She was holding a glass of champagne, smiling toward the camera like she'd never lied in her life. My father stood beside her, scarf tucked neatly, looking pleased with himself. Kian was there too, leaning into the frame with a grin, holding up 2 fingers in a careless peace sign. The fifth photo was of 3 plates at a restaurant. The sixth was the Eiffel Tower at night. I didn't feel shocked. Not exactly. Shock is loud. What I felt was a slow, quiet alignment of facts, like a drawer sliding closed. They hadn't canceled Paris. They'd canceled me. My thumb hovered over the screen. Nadia's post had a dozen comments already. My mother had commented too. "Mom, the best weekend. So grateful." It's twice to read it twice. Then I took screenshots. Each photo, each caption, each comment, the timestamp at the top of the app showing it was posted that morning. I didn't like being lied to, but I liked being publicly edited out even less. My phone buzzed with a new notification, a text from my mother. "Mom, hi love, are you free for dinner next Thursday? We found a great place. Dress nice, eyes." I looked at the message, then back at the Paris photos, the elevator mirror, the croissants, the night tower. I set my coffee down carefully like it mattered. Then I replied with one word. "Me?" "Yes. And I saved that screenshot too." I didn't open the photos again that morning, not because they hurt, but because I didn't need to look twice to understand what they meant. Instead, I got dressed, cleaned my apartment, and sat down with my laptop like it was any other Sunday. Habit is useful when emotions want to rush ahead of logic. I treated the situation the way I treated work problems. Define scope, gather data, don't assume intent until the pattern is undeniable. By noon, the pattern was already there. I opened my calendar and scrolled back 3 months to when Paris first appeared in our family conversations. October 1st, my mother's text. Thinking of a Paris weekend for the 4 of us. Tech, what dates work? October 2nd. My reply with availability. October 2nd. Later that night, her request for the hotel deposit. I lined it all up in a timeline document. Dates. Messages. Amounts! I attached screenshots labeled clearly. No commentary, just facts. This wasn't the first time my parents had adjusted plans without me. It was the first time they'd done it with international flights and a paper trail. What mattered wasn't that they went without me. It was how they'd handled it, lying casually, publicly, while still collecting money and compliance from me. I checked my email next. Buried under newsletters and client threads was the original booking confirmation my mother had forwarded in October. Subject line: Paris reservation, Hotel Lumiere. I'd assumed she'd forwarded it to all of us. I searched my inbox for Kian's email address. Nothing. I checked the header details. The forward had only been sent to me. That was interesting. I opened my banking app again and downloaded the transaction record for the $620 transfer. Date, amount, recipient, memo. Clean.
Simple. I saved the PDF.
Then I did something I hadn't planned to do yet. I called the hotel. It wasn't dramatic. No raised voice. I didn't accuse anyone of anything. I just asked a question. Hi, I said, when the receptionist answered in careful English. I'm calling about a reservation under the name Marianne Voss, checking in January 12th. She asked for the reservation number. I gave it to her from the email.
Yes, she said after a pause.
That reservation has already checked out this morning. Thank you, I said. And just to confirm, how many guests were listed? 3 adults, she replied. Not 4. I thanked her again and ended the call. I added the detail to my document. Hotel confirmation, 3 guests. The lie wasn't accidental. It had been structured. The more I looked, the clearer it became. My parents hadn't had to cancel. They'd reconfigured, quietly, efficiently, without the inconvenience of telling me. I didn't confront them, not then. People like my parents don't respond to confrontation the way movies suggest. They don't confess, they counterattack. They rewrite, they cry, or joke, or frame it as concern for your feelings. The truth gets buried under tone. What they don't do well is manage records. On Monday morning, my mother posted again. This time, it was a carefully cropped photo of a cafe table, coffee cups, a flaky pastry, her manicured hand visible near the edge. No faces, no location tag. The caption read, "Little moments matter most." I didn't like that one. It felt pointed. I screenshot it anyway. At work, I stayed focused. I finished my deliverables. I joined meetings. I smiled when required. Competence is its own camouflage. No one asks questions when you're steady. At lunch, my colleague Jenna leaned over and said, "Didn't you mention your family was going to Paris?" "Yes," I said. "Did it get canceled?" "Yes," I repeated, because technically that was the story they'd chosen. She nodded and went back to her salad. No drama. No curiosity. Just a data point. That afternoon, I got a Venmo notification. Marianne Voss sent you $310. Memo, hotel adjustment, A, half. I stared at the number longer than I needed to. She wasn't even trying to make it clean. I accepted the transfer without comment and saved the notification. The amount confirmed what I already knew. The hotel hadn't been refunded. It had been recalculated. 3 guests instead of 4. They hadn't lost money on the trip. They'd saved it. And I'd subsidized it. I didn't text her. I didn't ask questions. Silence encourages mistakes. On Tuesday, my father called. "Hey, kiddo," he said, cheerful, just checking in. "Your mom mentioned you seemed a little quiet." "I've been busy," I replied. "Good, good," he said. "That's good. We hate to think we disappointed you about Paris." I waited. He filled silence the way people who need approval always do. "It was just bad timing," he continued. "You understand how these things are." "I do," I said. There was a pause. He'd expected reassurance. He didn't get it. "Well," he said finally, "we're looking forward to dinner Thursday. Your mom picked a place with atmosphere." Atmosphere. Photos. Me too, I said. After the call, I wrote down what he'd said, word for word. I noted the time. I attached the call log. That night, I scrolled Nadia's profile again. She'd posted a story, already expired, but a mutual friend had reshared it. A short video from inside a restaurant.
And a light. Laughter.
My brother's voice in the background. I downloaded the clip. In the corner of the screen, reflected in a mirror, was the restaurant's name. I Googled it. The reservation cost matched the difference between what I'd paid and what my mother had refunded. I didn't feel angry. Anger is a blunt instrument. This required precision. By Wednesday evening, my folder had grown heavy with evidence. Texts,
Transfers, posts,
affirmations, timelines. Still, something was missing. People like my parents rarely leave loose ends unless they assume no one is looking. I suspected there was more. Something they thought was invisible. I found it by accident. While organizing screenshots, I noticed a forwarded email thread from my mother that I hadn't opened fully before. It was part of the hotel booking chain. I clicked Show Original Conversation. Below the forward to me, there was another message. Sent the same day, same hotel, same reservation. Recipients: my mother, my father, and Kian. Subject line: Paris weekend updated itinerary, 3 guests. The timestamp was October 5th, 3 days after I'd sent the deposit, 3 days after they'd already decided. Attached was a PDF itinerary. 3 names. My name wasn't one of them. I sat back in my chair and closed my eyes. Not in despair, but in clarity. This wasn't a last-minute change. It wasn't work. It wasn't bad timing. They had planned the trip without me from the beginning. The family reset had been a pitch. The deposit had been a convenience. The cancellation had been a cover. And the dinner on Thursday? That was the performance. The soft landing. The place where they'd expect me to smile, dress nicely, and let it go. Because that's what I always did. I saved the email, backed it up to 2 places, labeled it carefully, key receipt. Then I closed my laptop and got ready for bed. Thursday was less than 24 hours away. Thursday arrived without ceremony. I woke early, went for a run, answered emails, and finished a report I'd been postponing. The steadiness wasn't forced. It was familiar. When you've lived most of your life being underestimated, composure becomes muscle memory. At noon, my mother texted the family group chat. "Mom, tonight at 7:30. Hi Powell French Pas. Please be on time. They have a strict seating policy." A restaurant with a seating policy was code for one thing: witnesses. I checked the restaurant's website during my lunch break. White tablecloths, exposed brick. A wall of mirrors angled just enough to reflect faces and glasses and laughter, the kind of place where people took photos before eating and again after dessert. I understood then why my mother had chosen it. She wanted a reset, not just for the story, but for the optics. Dinner would be where she smoothed things over without acknowledging anything specific. Where my father would make a toast about family. Where Kian would joke and interrupt. Where I'd be expected to play my role. Agreeable, forgiving, quiet. And if I smiled and let the night end without friction, the Paris photos would fade into miscommunication and the money would become confusing logistics. I didn't plan to interrupt dinner. I planned to let it happen. At 6:45, I dressed carefully. Nothing dramatic. Black trousers, a neutral blouse, low heels. Hair pulled back, the version of myself my parents liked best, composed enough to photograph, plain enough not to compete. Before leaving, I checked my phone one last time. Everything was there. The timeline document, the bank transfer PDF, the hotel confirmation call log, the forwarded email with the 3-name itinerary, the Paris photos, the captions, the refund notification. I had duplicated the folder and shared access with myself on a second cloud account. I'd emailed copies to my work address. I'd even printed the key documents and placed them neatly in a slim folder inside my bag. Paper changes the tone of a conversation. At 7:28, I arrived at the restaurant. My parents were already there. My mother sat with her back straight, a silk scarf draped just so, scanning the room like she was hosting. My father stood when he saw me, arms opening wide. "There she is," he said, loud enough for the neighboring table to hear. "Doesn't she look lovely?" My mother smiled tightly. "We were just saying how nice it is to get everyone together," Kian waved from his chair. "Hey, stranger." I returned each greeting with the appropriate amount of warmth. No excess. No withdrawal. We were seated near the mirror wall.
Of course we were. Menus were opened.
Water poured. The rhythm of a performance began. My mother ordered wine for the table without asking. My father nodded approval. Ian made a comment about portion sizes. It was all very normal. That was the danger of it. How normal manipulation looks when it's habitual. Halfway through appetizers, my mother leaned toward me. "So," she said, voice light, "have you thought any more about spring travel? Maybe we can reschedule something later in the year, when things are calmer." There it was! The bridge she wanted to cross without acknowledging the river underneath. "I've been busy," I said. She laughed softly. "Always." That's our Lena. My father raised his glass. "To family," he said. "No matter what plans change." Glasses clinked. I lifted mine and set it down without drinking. I wasn't ready yet, the dinner continued. Stories were told, mostly by my parents, mostly about themselves. My mother recounted a funny mishap with hotel keys. My father joked about airline lounges. Kian talked about a waiter who didn't recognize him. They weren't careful, they assumed I hadn't seen. Or that if I had, I wouldn't say anything. The thing about being underestimated is that people don't guard their words around you. And so they perform. At 8:42, dessert menus arrived. My mother excused herself to the restroom. As she stood, she placed a hand briefly on my shoulder, a proprietary gesture. "You okay?" she murmured. "Sweet for show?" "I'm fine," I said. She smiled and walked away. Across the table, Kian leaned in. "You're being weird quiet," he said. "Everything good?" "Yes," I replied. He shrugged, already distracted by his phone. When my mother returned, dessert was ordered. A chocolate thing meant to be shared. Espresso for my father. "Another round of wine!" Then my father cleared his throat. He always did this before announcements. "I just want to say," he began, "how proud I am of this family. We've had changes, adjustments, but we handle them with grace." My mother nodded, eyes shining. "This dinner," he continued, "was important to us, to show that even when plans don't work out, we show up for each other." He looked at me then, directly, expectant. This was the moment they wanted closure.
I didn't give it to them.
Instead, I reached into my bag. Not quickly, not dramatically, just enough to shift the air. "I agree," I said calmly. "Showing up matters." My mother's smile froze just slightly. "I actually brought something," I continued, because I didn't want to misunderstand anything. I placed the slim folder on the table. Paper against linen makes a sound people notice. The table went quiet, not completely, but enough. Nearby diners glanced over and then politely looked away. My father frowned. "What's that?" "Clarification," I said. I opened the folder and slid out the first page. The hotel itinerary. I didn't push it toward them yet. I just let it sit between us. "This," I said, "is the Paris itinerary dated October 5th.
3 guests. Kian's head snapped up.
My mother's breath caught, not a gasp, just a hitch. My father leaned forward, scanning the page. "That must be!" My mother started. I raised a hand slightly, not to silence her, to pace her. "I'm not finished," I said, still calm. I took out the bank transfer record and placed it beside the itinerary. "This is the $620 deposit I transferred on October 2nd, I continued, labeled Paris Hotel Deposit. My father's jaw tightened. The table next to us had gone very still. I added the refund notification. $310. "And this," I said, "is the partial refund I received on Monday." I looked up then, met each of their eyes one by one. "I didn't want to assume," I said evenly. So I confirmed with the hotel. My mother reached for the papers.
"I didn't pull them away. Lena," she said, voice strained but still careful, "this isn't the place. The hotel confirmed 3 guests. I said,
Checked out Sunday morning. Silence settled like dust. Kian stared at the documents, color draining from his face. My father straightened in his chair, eyes flicking to the mirror wall, then back to me. Around us, Forks paused. A server hesitated near our table, sensing something but not sure what. I closed the folder. I'm going to excuse myself, I said, standing. I wanted clarity. I have it now. My mother reached out, fingers brushing my wrist. Sit down, she whispered urgently. People are watching. I looked at her hand, then at her face. I know, I said. And that was when my father said my name, sharp, low, unfamiliar. And I knew the next thing he tried to do would decide how this ended. My father saying my name like that, compressed, warning, was meant to pull me back into line. It didn't. I didn't sit down, but I didn't leave either. I remained standing beside the table, posture relaxed, hands visible. There's a difference between making a scene and allowing one to exist. I chose the second. This isn't appropriate, my father said, louder now, not shouting. We can discuss this privately. My mother nodded too quickly. You're misinterpreting things, Lena. You always do this when you feel excluded. That was her first pivot. Frame the facts as feelings. I didn't respond to it. Instead, I turned slightly, enough that the mirror wall behind us reflected the table. The documents, their faces, mine. Anyone glancing our way could see a family paused in something serious. Not dramatic. I didn't raise my voice, I said evenly. I didn't accuse anyone. I brought records. That's all, Kian swallowed. Mom, he said quietly, what is this? My mother opened her mouth, then closed it. She looked at my father. He took over. He always did when control slipped. There were changes, he said. You weren't flexible with the dates. We didn't think you'd want to go last minute. I nodded once. The itinerary was updated October 5th. That doesn't mean it was 3 days after I sent the deposit. My tone stayed flat. I didn't correct his language. I didn't argue intent. I just returned to time and numbers. A server approached hesitantly. Is everything all right here? Yes, I said before my parents could speak. We're fine. The server nodded, relieved to escape. My mother leaned forward, lowering her voice. You're embarrassing us. I didn't post photos, I replied. I didn't tag anyone. I didn't lie. Her face tightened. That landed. I took my phone from my bag and unlocked it. Not to show it to them yet, but so they could see I was prepared. There's one more thing, I said. Then I'm done, my father exhaled sharply. You're good with money. Lena, I'm not asking for an explanation, I continued. I already have one. I just want to be clear about what happens next. That made him pause. Consequences weren't something he liked to hear about unless he was delivering them. I turned the phone so the screen faced the center of the table, Nadia's Paris post. The caption, my mother's comment underneath, the story publicly told, I said, was that Paris happened. The story privately told to me was that it was canceled. My mother shook her head. That was just social media. You know how people post. Yes, I said. That's why accuracy matters. Kian pushed his chair back slightly. He looked between us, then at the mirror, catching the reflection of other diners watching without pretending not to. You told me she knew, he said to my parents, not loudly. Just clearly, my mother's mouth opened. No sound came out. My father's eyes hardened. This is family business. Then it should have been handled like family, I said. Not like accounting. That was the closest I came to a sharp line. I gathered the documents and slid them back into the folder. I'm not here to argue, I said. I'm here to set boundaries, my mother scoffed. Boundaries? After everything we've done for you? I met her gaze, held it.
I'll finish, I said.
Please. She fell silent, not because she agreed, but because people were listening now. I won't participate in plans where I'm used to fund or validate decisions I'm excluded from, I said. I won't accept partial truths meant to manage my reaction, and I won't be attending dinners meant to smooth over dishonesty. My father stared at me like he was recalculating something. If you want a relationship with me, I continued, it will be transparent. If that doesn't work for you, that's your choice. I zipped the folder and placed it back in my bag. I'll send you the remaining refund request in writing, I added, for the other half. My mother laughed then, a brittle sound. You're really doing this? Over a weekend? It wasn't a weekend, I said. It was a pattern. I picked up my coat. As I turned to leave, my father said, If you walk out, don't expect. I stopped, looked back at him. Expectations are exactly the problem, I said. Then I walked out. The cold outside felt clean. I stood on the sidewalk for a moment, breathing, letting my body catch up to what my mind had already decided. My phone buzzed almost immediately. A text from my mother. Mom, you blindsided us. We could have talked. I didn't reply. Another buzz. My father. Dad. This was unnecessary. Call me tomorrow. I didn't reply. 10 minutes later, a Venmo notification came through. Marianne Voss sent you $310. Memo. Final hotel refund. I accepted it. Screenshot. Saved. I went home and slept better than I had in weeks. The fallout didn't come all at once. It rarely does when the truth is introduced quietly. It spread in ripples. By Saturday, Nadia had deleted the Paris post. My mother stopped posting entirely for a while. My aunt called me, not to scold, but to ask, carefully, if everything was okay. Word travels differently when there are receipts. Keon texted me on Monday. Keon, I didn't know. I should have asked more questions. I replied simply. I'm not asking you to choose sides. Just to be honest. Keon. I get that. We didn't fix anything that day. But something shifted. My parents tried a few more times. Calls framed as concern. Messages that suggested reconciliation without acknowledgement. I responded in writing only, briefly, consistently. When my mother said, I don't understand why you're being distant, I replied, I'm available for conversations that include accountability. When my father said, families move on, I replied, after repairs are made, they stopped pushing eventually. Not because they agreed, but because there was no leverage left. I didn't post about it. I didn't tell the story at gatherings. I didn't correct anyone who assumed things were fine now. Silence can be truthful without being loud. What I did do was adjust my life. I stopped sharing financial details. I stopped pre-approving plans. I stopped saying yes out of habit. I booked my own trip later that spring. Not Paris, somewhere quieter, somewhere no one expected. Photos, I went alone. On the flight back, I looked out the window and thought about how easy it would have been to swallow the lie, to let dinner do its job, to stay small and convenient. I understood then that quiet isn't weakness, it's choice. And choosing myself, calmly, publicly, with facts, was the most honest thing I'd ever done.